Supposed to help, almost 30% have closed for good. The Americans who need help with rent, already they are $25 billion in the hole. So will the relief stimulate this economy, or will it simply staunch the bleeding? Lawmakers from both sides say the $900 billion is just a temporary bandage.
This bill is not sufficient. It's emergency, but it's not enough.
Under law.
Inmates are supposed to be able to claim their own stimulus checks. The real question is practically and logistically, how does that happen and what's supposed to happen?
Ago says the main barrier to accessing those checks is a lack of technology resources at the facilities.
Assuming that you have a computer and internet access.
And also, key Democratic groups are lining up against the proposal. They're calling it bad for the country, bad for climate, and Bernie Sanders and dozens of more also agree on this. The bill could actually complicate the party's efforts to keep focus on the summer's major legislative victories going to the midterms, which will line up and determine which party controls the House and the Senate. The divide is testing the ability of Chuck Schumer and Nancy Pelosi to keep strong enough Democrats in line to avoid a government shutdown at the end of the month. So a lot of stuff is happening, a lot of big news, and let's see what happens, everybody, this November. Hopefully something good will happen, and hopefully more stimulus checks will go out to most of the people that need it the most. The White House, the Democrats, and Republicans are making a new effort to pass an expansion of benefits for the people. This may mean up to $300 extra every month, from monthly checks to stimulus payments. Janet Yellen said there is actually a risk that the US gas prices could rise again late this year, as years and fears over the possibility that Americans' wallets could be strained by a spike in prices similar to the one seen this summer. During an interview with CNN, when asked if Americans should be worried about gas prices rising again, Yellen said, "Well, it's a risk, and it's a risk that we're working on in the price cap to try to address it." Yellen said it is possible that there could be a spike in oil prices, and price cap proposal is designed to help both lower revenues that they use to support their economy, while also maintaining oil supplies that will help to hold down the global oil prices. This is something that we're trying to put in place to avoid a future spike in oil prices. Janet Yellen said that this could actually help fuel fears that gas price will spike again after it began sinking last month, providing big relief to inflation worried consumers, and the steady decline in prices has been driven by multiple factors, including recession fears, number one, that have knocked down oil prices already, and the fact that some Americans cut back on driving when gas prices spiked above $5 a gallon. Early this month, finance ministers from a group of countries said they would ban the provision of services which enable transportation of crude oil and petroleum products globally above the price cap, and this could actually block insurance cover or finance for oil shipments. That's not something good. Yellen also underscored that her trust in the Federal Reserve to determine how best to avoid the economic recession, and acknowledged a potential recession is a risk that the Fed is tightening monetary policy to address inflation. She added that despite high food and energy prices, we've got a good thing going, strong labor market, and it's possible to maintain that. The White House and some Democrats have also reportedly made a new effort to revive their enhanced child tax credit this year. All this year. According to Yahoo News, the White House is engaged with Senate Democrats about the idea and may be willing to back and renew some expired tax credits. The enhanced child tax credit, for instance, was enacted in March 2021, part of Joe Biden's American Rescue Plan. It expanded eligibility for the credit and up the amount that families could get from $2,000 to $3,000 to $3,600, depending on the age of the child. The credit, which automatically was a monthly payment, was credited with lifting millions of people out of poverty. But at the end of the credit, this credit expired at the end of 2021 in the face of opposition from Republicans and Joe Manchin. The credit was left out of the Inflation Reduction Act that Democrats passed last month, everybody. And so Yahoo News has said that the 2017 Republican tax overhaul required companies to deduct their research and development expenses over 5 years. As of 2022, there's bipartisan support for revising that requirement and allowing companies to keep immediately deducting those expenses rather than spreading them out. Democrats hope that provides some leverage to renew the credit. We have a lot of good news about the fourth stimulus check, Social Security benefits, SSDI and SSDI. Continue watching this video because you don't want to miss out on this. Taxing the wealthy is a big topic in Washington these days, and President Biden recently proposed in his 2023 annual budget a so-called billionaire minimum tax that would increase levies on the country's wealthiest households. But one proposal kicking around Capitol Hill is to raise taxes on high earners, making $400,000 and more. A recent congressional proposal seeks to apply that payroll tax on wages of $400,000 and up. Now the clock is ticking for lawmakers to make changes to ensure the program can continue to pay benefits as promised. and the Social Security Board of Trustees estimates the funds could be depleted in 2034, at which point 78% of benefits will be payable. To shore up the system, leaders face a choice of cutting benefits through changes like raising the retirement age, increasing taxes, or doing a combination of both. Applying Social Security payroll taxes to those above the wage base is a popular idea with the public. Once a worker crosses the threshold paying Social Security taxes on the first $147,000 of their annual earnings, their paychecks are no longer subject to those levies. So, the enhanced child tax credit, everybody, provided a crisis-era financial lifeline to many families. It reached nearly 40 million households and helped 65 million children. According to a recent White House fact sheet, the tax benefit's positive impact prompted Mitt Romney to propose the child tax credit to lawmakers for 2022 under the Family Security Act. Some policy experts support not only expanding the federal child tax credit program, but also seeing more states create and approve their own programs. 9 states have already enacted this and funded some of the credits on their own. Now, experts estimate that the 2021 federal child tax credit expansion lifted more than 4 million children above the poverty line, and the earned income tax credit is another very important tax credit that millions of families, Americans, were able to claim this year. The credit was introduced in the United States to provide a helping hand to lower-income working families, as the idea is that this allows tax filers to retain a majority of their money. The earned income tax credit reduced the amount of income tax owed to federal government and can be refundable in the event that the tax filer's credit is larger than the tax liability. It's also estimated that roughly 20% of eligible workers do not claim the earned income tax credit, and the average amount that individuals received during the 2020 tax year was around $2,400. Folks, do you think that President Biden will take action for the American people and send out stimulus checks? Tell me what you think in the comments.
That another nation should be part of NATO. We just met with the Secretary General of NATO, for whom we have great respect. And again, it's self-determined by a country that they might want to make the appeal. It's up to all of NATO to decide.
Because President Biden and many Democrats, as well as Republicans, want to help out the American people with a fourth stimulus check, and I cannot wait for President Biden to send it out. So Democratic senators are on board for more stimulus bills this year. This will be a big change to millions of people in the low and middle income households across the nation. More crisis relief is going out, everybody, so we should be looking forward to this. So we have some big news. It's that Manchin is starting to turn up the heat on another round of President Biden's Democratic spending bill. Manchin has ramped up his calls this month to step up taxes on the richest people in America. Manchin actually told the Wall Street Journal, "I respect Kyrsten Sinema and what her concerns may be, but I think basically our financial situation is getting worse and not better. So we better have a better way of looking at it. So that there are many ways to pay for such ideas that do not include tax rate increases that could hurt small businesses and our economic competitiveness while we continue to emerge from a crisis and economic downturn." Senator Kyrsten Sinema's opposition to tax rates have already prompted Democrats to scramble for new ways to finance their plans, and also to expand healthcare, childcare, and education. So far, Manchin has said he backs hiking the corporate tax rate to 25% as part of a future spending bill. So what are your thoughts on this? Will Joe Manchin get it done? And the different changes, demands from both senators underscore the difficulty and tricky path ahead for Democrats trying to move forward with President Biden's spending bill. Manchin has already said that he would like to see changes made to the version of the bill that was passed in the House of Representatives. It's also important to remember, everybody, that lawmakers need all Senate Democrats to support another package to push it through the 50-50 chamber. And the good news, everybody, is that most lawmakers are optimistic about getting the massive spending bill passed this month. That includes President Biden, Nancy Pelosi, and Chuck Schumer. During a recent interview with Politico, the Commerce Secretary said that Joe Manchin is gettable on a revised Build Back Better package and in a key part of President Biden's domestic agenda.
For their homes, estimated savings $500 per year on average. We can do these things by making sure that no one earning less than $400,000 a year will pay a single penny more in federal taxes. All we're asking is that the wealthiest Americans and the largest corporations begin to pay their fair share, at least part of their fair share. You've heard me say it before, I'm a capitalist. I believe you should be able to make as much money as you legally can. Just pay your fair share. There's no reason why a billionaire should be paying a lower tax rate than a teacher or a firefighter. That's in sharp contrast to what today's Republican Party is offering. And if they hadn't put this in print, you'd think I was making it up. Senator Rick Scott of Florida, United States Senator, who's leading the Republican National Senatorial Campaign Committee, released what he calls the Ultra MAGA Agenda. It's a MAGA agenda, all right. Let me tell you about this Ultra MAGA agenda. It's extreme, as most MAGA things are. It will actually raise taxes on 75 million American families, over 95% of whom make less than $100,000 a year. Among the hardest hit, working families, kids with folks. Imagine you're a family of four and you don't make enough money to have federal taxes. Because you don't make enough money to pay them. You pay all your taxes, but you just don't make enough. And under this new plan, this tax plan, the Ultra MAGA agenda, while big corporations and billionaires are going to pay nothing more, the working class folk are going to pay a hell of a lot more. And it goes further than that. This extreme Republican agenda calls for Congress. Now, I'm not making this up either. You got to really think about this. It requires a vote, if it were to pass, every 5 years. The Congress would have to vote to reinstate or eliminate Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid. Social Security is something seniors have paid in for their whole life. And it has to be reauthorized. Has to be reauthorized every 5 years. Look, again, it's hard to make this up. But then again, it's a mega agenda. Meanwhile, millionaires and billionaires and corporations skate by. Imagine that. Just imagine that. I think it is truly outrageous. I've offered a different plan, a plan rooted in American values of fairness and decency. Wealthy folks and corporations will pay a little more. Billionaires will have to pay a minimum tax. And again, most importantly, no one making less than $400,000 will pay a penny more in federal taxes. We're going to protect and strengthen Social Security and Medicare, not put it on the block every 5 years. Let me remind you again, I reduced the federal deficit. All the talk about the deficit from my Republican friends, I love it. I've reduced it $350 billion in my first year in office. And we're on track to reduce it by the end of September by another $1.5 trillion, the largest drop ever. I don't want to hear Republicans talk about deficits and their ultra MAGA agenda. I want to hear about fairness. I want to hear about decency. I want to hear about helping ordinary people.